Hi, Curtis.
Hi, Sabrina.
Nice that you could come on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So before we jump into this whole conversation and see where it takes us today, I would love for you to introduce yourself a little for the audience and just talk about what you do, who you are.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Curtis Satterfield, and I do a couple things. I'm a college professor. I teach IT topics, computer science, networking, game development are some of the things I teach. I'm also a leadership coach I specialize in people in the IT industry. But honestly, anybody I'm also a big gaming geek. So if you're into that too, I got you. So those are sort of the things I do. And
Yes.
I wave my geek flag proudly because I'm very much of the authentic mindset, be yourself. And if people don't agree with you or don't like you, then, those aren't the people you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah, that's a very important part, like be yourself and just make sure that you also surround yourself with people who fit that, who you want to be or who you are just naturally. So how does that play into your work, this idea of being your authentic self, not changing anything about yourself? How do you take that into your work, and especially also the coaching aspect of your work?
It's funny that you asked me that, because I actually get asked that not often, but on a regular basis. Clients or people that I'm working with will ask me, like, you don't look like other coaches I see. You're not wearing like a blazer and you're not clean shaven. And I'm like, yeah, because if somebody goes online and finds me or gets in touch with me and they're put off because I've got a bunch of facial hair and I'm not wearing, what they think I should be wearing, that's not who I want to work with, because I'm going to be me. I spent a large part of my life when I was younger trying to not pretend to be somebody I wasn't, but hiding who I was, just because of the way I was brought up and things like that. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to be me. So I'm not trying to look like everybody else, because I don't want to attract everyone. I want to attract a certain type of person into my life, and both personally and professionally. So that's really a big core tenet for me, is being yourself, and just attracting those people that want to work with you or to spend time with you as you are, and not because they think you're somebody else.
And how did you come to that realization that that's sort of an important part of how you also want to work and how you want to live, basically?
That's a really good question. And I'm trying to think now, sort of when. I think part of it was getting older, as I started getting older. And that one of the things that I've always had an issue with is I really care about what other people think about me. And I don't mean just people that my family or my friends. I mean anybody. So it's the old adage: if you put me in a room with 100 people, 99 people like me and one person doesn't, all I'm worried about is, why is that one person like me? And so there's the saying that as you get older, you care less about what other people think. And that's a little true, but not super true for me. And it's actually taken a lot of personal work and working with counselor and coaches and things to get to the point where it's easier for me now to go, okay, that person doesn't like me, but what does it matter? It's some random person in traffic that, honked at me because whatever reason, that's how bad it was for me. I hated going driving because I was worried I was going to upset somebody in traffic. Like, who, what, really? Like, that's, so it's,
that's an awesome thing that you're sharing, because I think if everyone was very honest with themselves, then many more people would openly say, like, it's not so easy for me to not care about other people. And it's something that shapes a lot how we live life, before we probably have sort of a revelation or go through a process where we decide to actively not do that anymore.
Yeah,
So it's a common human thing to care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know that I necessarily had a revelation. It's sort of like I said, it's the culmination of many years of seeing a counselor and self-work. And honestly, the past few years is when I really started putting the self-work, because I'd go to the counselor and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, do these things, and I'd do them for a little bit, and then I'd sort of find myself back in my old neural pathways and doing like I was. So it's been fairly recently that I've really started, as I started to get into the coaching, and because I've been sort of teaching using the coaching mindset for probably a decade, and that whole idea of I don't like to stand up and lecture and tell people, I like to have discussions. I like to have them think. I give them a project and I say, figure it out, and if you have questions, ask me. And then that's one of my favorite ways to do it. And it wasn't until I started to do the one-on-one that I realized I really needed to start do that sort of like deep inner work on myself. Because if I don't do that, then how am I going to help someone else, achieve what they want to achieve in leadership, or even just, some basic self-improvement, like goal setting, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. So what you say is beautiful, because often when coaches speak to potential clients, the topic might come up like that it's maybe a session and then things change, but that's not reality. If we really want to change how we think, how we feel about certain things, it's a process, and it can take quite some time until we get where we want to be. I'm wondering what made you to decide that you want to go on this journey. Is there a particular reason why you had the special interest in self-development and really changing how you think and how you do certain things?
I think it's a really good question. I have to really think about this for a second, because I'm not 100% certain there was a specific culminating event that was sort of like, the straw that broke the camel's back. Just, I know I've been unhappy with myself very frequently throughout my life. It's like I've never been good enough, or, my expectations were too high. And then, I'd go to my counselor and she'd be like, well, your expectations are unreasonable. I'm like, yeah, but if I don't have those, nobody's going to hold, so just this sort of negative self-talk and those things. And I just recently, I had a change in, there was a restructuring at my job, and I got reclassified, which sort of brought some things into focus for me about, what I was doing with my time and how I was living my life. And the change has given me the opportunity to reach out and help more people. That's why I started into the leadership coaching, because I love helping my students, and I love helping them, and seeing them graduate is very often the last contact I get with them sometimes. And I don't get to see them go on and do the things that I know the great things they're going to do. And I do have students come back every now and then, or I run into them in the community and they tell me, how things are going. But I realize that with the new flexibility I have with my scheduling and the free time, that I could get into helping people in the industry, which is one of those things that, having come from the industry in the beginning and working as a consultant for the past decade, I still see people in the industry sort of struggling with some of the same issues that I have. And that was sort of like, oh, I have the time now, I have the credentials, I have sort of everything in place that it sort of kind of meshed together. I'm like, why don't I start helping these people as well? Because that's really one of the things that I enjoy, is that sense of I've helped someone have a better life. And that can be anything from I help somebody figure out how to better manage their time to, a student who comes through the program, not my coaching, but the, at my school, and they get a degree and they go out and they go from, working in retail to now they're working in IT and making 2 or 3 times as much, and they have, a solid schedule as opposed to nights and weekends and all that stuff.
Yeah. And this whole, I'm particularly interested in this whole connection between authenticity, technology, and then also leadership, like, let's say sustainable and positive leadership in tech, because what we often see is that tech, or that's the stereotype. You can say a little more about that, but what we often see is that there may be less healthy habits in how tech teams might operate, and how also, as you say, like how the human aspect flows into the work of a person working in tech. So can you say a little more about that?
Yes, that was another reason that I decided to go down this path as well. Is I've seen it a lot in industry, and a lot of the contacts I still have talk about it. What tends to happen, and not necessarily just in IT, in a lot of industries, but especially in IT, is the person with the most technical skills or the best technical skills, the organization says, oh, you're going to be the new team lead because you can, you've been doing the best work or whatever. And so they get promoted, and then you have sort of one of two outcomes. The first outcome is, they're a terrible leader, they burn out, and then they quit. And then the second scenario is they get promoted, they don't know how to manage properly, not through any fault of their own. It's just, that's not something you really learn in schooling or, from technical trainings. They do a terrible job, they upset people on their team, and then you have multiple team members who are complaining or end up quitting. And that anytime you have somebody quit an organization, it costs the organization a lot of money. So my goal was to get into it and to help those people that either have been put into a leadership position and have taken a step back and gone like, oh, I think I could use some guidance here. I need to figure out how to do all these things that I wasn't ready for. For example, going from working on a team, I was sort of friends with everybody, but now I'm the boss. Yeah. And how do I deal with that and maintain my relationships and still be friends and those sorts of things? To those people that are thinking long term, like I want to get into a leadership position, but I don't know, how am I going to know when I'm ready? How do I sort of put those pieces in place to be ready to be a leader? And through all of it, my take is being your authentic self. So, not trying to act like somebody you're not, because the literature shows that if you are an authentic leader, you're more likely to have people trust and respect you and are willing to, work for you, as opposed to if you're trying to be people. It's like people have a built-in sensor for crap. They can tell as soon as you put on that persona, and they're like, there's something's not quite right here. And it doesn't, you're not as at ease if somebody comes in and there's themselves and they're like, let me pull back the curtain, this is me. So that's really what I am all about, is trying to get people to be themselves and to not try and hide behind a persona that they aren't.
And would you say that generally the stereotype about the tech industry is right, that being yourself and being like socially comfortable with other people is truth in some sense? I'm not saying for everyone, but for a majority of people, so that you see a greater need to make people feel comfortable, even in the tech industry, to be themselves, to really show who they are as humans.
I think we have stereotypes for a reason, and even though it's not great to stereotype people, there's often a little bit of truth to a lot of stereotypes you see. And often the one you see for IT workers is this person that's hiding in a basement working on a computer with all the lights off, and they don't want to talk to anybody else, and that's sort of thing. Picture. Yeah, and sadly that is true to an extent. We often get a lot of those personality types because they think, oh, I'm just going to sit and work on my computer all day, I won't have to talk to anybody else because I don't want to talk to anybody else. And the reality is that used to be the case a long time ago, but now with the way organizations work, it's more, usually you're going to be working on a team, especially if you're in a bigger organization, a bigger IT. And even if you're not, if you're like the only IT person, or maybe there's only one or two of you, then you're in charge of working with all the other people in the organization.
Yeah.
So doing help desk. So we get a lot of in the teaching side, I get a lot of students that come through often that are very sort of reserved and, you know, don't want to put themselves out there and have that sort of mindset of, oh, you know, I'm going to sit behind a computer, and I have to sort of coach them through like, yeah, no, I mean, you will spend a lot of time on a computer, but you will have to interact with other people. So I think, I don't know how large of a percentage sort of fits that stereotype, but it's definitely fairly accurate, you know, more so than you would find in the sales industry, for example. I mean, if you're a salesperson, it's very rare that a salesperson is like, oh, I don't want to go talk to people, right? I mean, they're typically, we see those as the extroverts who get that energy from going out and interacting with other people. So it's definitely a thing.
So if one of, you know, a tech person is watching this now and is saying, yeah, like I find myself in this description that I also prefer to hide. I don't really want to, I'm not so comfortable talking to people. What is your advice for them? How can they also work on themselves? Not, you know, if they want to start this process today, not necessarily waiting for someone to support them, but just going through that themselves. What's your advice? What could they do?
The honest truth is, the best way to get better at communicating or talking with other people is to talk to other people. And it's a very uncomfortable process, I'll be honest. Having gone through it myself, being willing to put yourself out there, it's going to feel you're going to feel vulnerable. You know, putting yourself out there like that is going to take a lot of willpower. It's going to take a lot of energy at first. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, it's great to sort of have a coach, or even if that's not necessarily the route you want to go right away, just someone else that you can talk to and say, this, I want to get better at this. I'm going to try and start putting myself out there, so that you have that a little bit of accountability to that you're going to keep with it. You can start working on just sort of self things. One of the biggest things that I find a lot of times, and this is sort of a broad stroke, so if any IT people are watching, this isn't you, no offense, but very often what I find with a lot of IT people is they have a very cynical mindset about things. And one of the things I try to talk about is getting rid of the negative talk, both for yourself and for others. So if you meet someone and you're having a conversation and they say something that you disagree with, just take it in, you know, it's just a statement. It's an opinion someone has given you, or even if it's a fact that they've given you and you disagree with it. Maybe at work, they're saying do process A and you're like, no, process B will work better. Don't immediately jump on the defensive and start trying to explain to the other person why your idea is better. You know, take it in, think about it, have that conversation, and ask them questions like, okay, you want to use process A, what do you see are the benefits to process A? And start to have those conversations. And really, that, I think that piece, the getting rid of negative talk, is going to be one of the hardest things to do, and will take the longest time to do. But I think hands down, for personal development, it is probably one of the best things you can possibly do, if not the best. But again, that's my opinion. So.
No, that's very powerful, because I mean, that's not only true for IT people, right? That's true for every human. The way we talk to ourselves and the way we talk about others or to others shapes our reality. So if someone is a person who has a lot of negative words for themselves and others, and you can change that, of course, our reality or our perception of what reality is can also change for the better. So that's very powerful advice.
Yeah. And something else to keep in mind is, you know, and again, this is sort of a soft statistic, but it's somewhere around 50 to 60% of the conversations we have at work are why somebody else is bad and doing a bad job, or why somebody else is good and why we should listen to them. So only 40 to 50% of what we're talking about is product. And I'm not saying like do away with water cooler talk. That's not, I'm talking about in meetings and things where we're trying to get things accomplished. So thinking about that and trying to do away with some of that talk as well, where you're, okay, so-and-so wants us to do process A. Instead of immediately going to, oh, well, so-and-so doesn't know this and they're that, instead of wasting time on that, get into the meeting. Okay, why do we have to use process A? Is it a manager? Yes. Okay, we have no choice. How can we make process A work best for us? And having those conversations instead of spending so much time, with the negative talk again, whether it's about the thing you're doing or the person that wants you to do it or anything really.
So it's more like a very solution oriented and forward-looking perspective rather than the resistance that might show up and sort of staying in that space of resistance.
Right. And that's hard. That is absolutely a difficult thing to do. And I'm not advocating that anyone is ever going to be able to do away with that 100%. But even if you're able to reduce it a little bit, the amount of return on investment you get for just putting in the work to try and be more, I don't even want to say positive, but trying to be less negative about things, whether it's at work, in your personal life or whatever, is huge.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And especially if I'm working in tech and I want to get into leadership maybe one day, then our attitude plays such a big role in whether we can make that work or not. So starting that process early so that we can, be on the way can really do a lot of things for us.
Yeah. And that's in the same vein of negative talk. One of the things I see sometimes with some IT people, and this isn't specific to IT people, I see this in lots of different areas, is I have all this specific IT knowledge. I can do computers inside and out, networking, whatever. And then somebody comes to me and they ask a question. I think it's a dumb question. Well, it's not. Everybody, this is the other thing I say, everybody is smart in their own way. Just because you're an IT expert and somebody's come to you and they don't know how to copy and paste on the computer doesn't mean they're stupid, especially if it's like the CEO or somebody, right? Like they're CEO for a reason. So sort of checking that attitude at the door. And I really try to instill that in all my students too, coming through my programs is, it's very easy to get in the mindset of, oh, they must be dumb because they can't do these simple things, but they're not computer experts, right? Like that's the whole reason that you got hired to be an IT professional, because you're the computer expert. Everyone else is the expert in what they're doing at their job, whether it's sales, marketing, administration, manufacturing, whatever it is, that's their expertise. And you can't expect them to know how to do everything. It's like if you go and get a license to drive a car, you just need to know the basics to operate the car and how to follow the rules. You don't need to know how to service the engine. You don't need to know how to fix the car if it breaks. Now, a lot of people do. A lot of people like to do their own maintenance. But what happens when the car breaks down? You take it to a mechanic, right? And you don't think the mechanic's stupid because they can't, they're trying to fiddle around with their point of sale system, and it's because that's not their expertise, but they're going to get your car fixed in like 10 minutes. That's sort of the mindset I'm trying to get people to shift to, is just because someone else doesn't have the same expertise as you doesn't make them any less of a person than you are.
Yeah, and again, that will go a long way in how then the negative self-talk can shift into something more positive, and that will open doors in how we interact with people generally then.
Yeah.
Because, how, as you said earlier, the energy that we sort of have when we go into a conversation, people pick up on that. Maybe they're not aware, but sort of they get a sense of what's going on in our minds or how comfortable we are. So that means there's a very strong correlation between how we can make tech generally work in, let's say, in companies, and make it effective, and also make the leadership in tech effective, and the human aspect, like how we can generally interact with people. There's also this aspect of, if we like hide behind the computer all the time, that we might not have a very healthy balance in terms of our work and life, or how we basically live our life every day. Is that also something that you look into in your work?
Yes, and it can be challenging for IT people, because like myself especially, I'm also a hobbyist. I like doing the work I do, even on my own. I still build my own computers. I network my whole house. I still, I'm like the network administrator at my house. I'm tech support at my house, So, and I enjoy those things. I have to be careful when I tell people this, because I don't want them to think I'm saying like, don't do any computer stuff outside of work, because a lot of us, that's what we enjoy. We enjoy doing that. So as long as the person has a healthy balance of understanding that, when I go home, the projects I'm working on, I enjoy it. Even if it's a work project, if they really are enjoying the work project, maybe it's something that they're passionate about, like that's fine, but you do have to sort of compartmentalize, these are the things I'm doing for work, and these are the things I'm doing for myself, even if it's the same, we'll say hobby, for lack of a better word. So, if computers are your hobby, that's a silly way to say it, but like if that's the case,
no, that's fine. I mean,
as long as you feel like the time you're putting in for it, some of that is for you, that's what's important. It's not necessarily what you're doing so much as who you're doing it for, right? And that is one of the things that I try to work with people on, because burnout's a big topic for me. I suffered from burnout in the past, and I know it's no fun. And one of the ways that we can sort of mitigate against burnout is that self-care. And some people might hear that term and go, oh, self-care, whatever. But that's really what it is. Making sure that, and it doesn't even have to be, I know some people, when you say self-care, they get this idea of like sitting on a rock somewhere, meditating, and while, those things, meditations and yoga and all those things are great, it doesn't even have to be that. It can be something as simple as making sure that every day you do something for yourself for 30 minutes to an hour, and it's for you. It's not like, oh, I have to pay the bills, I spend an hour paying the bills. That's not what I'm talking about. Something you enjoy. And it can be something as simple as, watching Netflix or watching YouTube for things that you enjoy or want to watch. Now, I would say that's not the only thing you should be doing, but that's just, a simple example of finding that time for something that you are doing solely for yourself, or it could be for you and a partner, or whatever, as long as it's not necessarily for some work motivation.
Yeah, that's a big one, because often I think, as you say, like the term self-care already might bring up some resistance. But self-care doesn't mean it has to be meditation or some esoteric stuff. It's just like us being aware, okay, I want to take care of me as a human. I'm not just a machine working on projects the whole time. And if I take care of me as a human, then that will also have positive impact on other aspects in my life.
And it's funny you use the word project, because when I think about projects, I have all kinds of projects, but I segregate them. I've got my work projects, whether that's for teaching or whether that's for the coaching. I've got my personal projects, which are the things I like to do, which I like to make things and DIY and that sort of thing. Those projects are things I would put those in my self-care, because those are for me. I don't necessarily need to do those. Then there's also projects I have like around the house, house projects, like I need to fix the door because it's sagging, or the refrigerator is leaking, or whatever that needs to be. Refrigerator's leaking, that doesn't make any sense, but you get the idea.
I know what you mean. Something in the house needs fixing, so that's not necessary.
I meant to say the sink is leaking. I don't know why I put refrigerator in there.
Well, it might also be leaking. I think it can.
It's true. It's true.
So those are projects that you you put under, okay, maintenance, but projects for you is really something that you are very consciously choosing as something you love, something that gives you pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, all the hobbies we see out there, though, anything you're doing for a hobby should be self-care in a sense. And so whether that's, you know, like woodworking, or in my gaming space, you know, there's painting miniatures and, you know, preparing to play RPGs and all these different things. That's sort of that personal care space, or that's what I call it. You know, those are projects that you're doing because you want to do them. Yeah. But this is another caveat here. We need to be careful with those, because you can also get burnout with those as well.
Yeah.
You know, if you keep thinking, maybe like one of my favorite things is I love watching sailboat restoration videos on YouTube. I don't have a sailboat. I've been sailing like twice in my life, but for some reason I'm just drawn to sailboats. And I love watching these projects, but they're big, massive projects that'll take years, or sometimes will take years, sometimes multiple years. And if a person sort of has a hobby and then says, it takes like, I bought a sailboat and I'm going to restore it. There sort of becomes this idea of, I need to be working on the project. If I'm not working on that, it's never going to get done. Yeah. And that's true, but it's also can be unhealthy, because sometimes then if you just keep working on it because you feel like you have to work on it, we're not in that self-care space anymore, right? We're now back into, it's not a work project, but it is work that I'm working on that I'm not really enjoying. So there's a lot of self-introspection that you need to sort of keep in mind as you're doing your hobbies. And I see this in smaller hobbies too, like the miniature painting community. We have what we call the pile of shame, which is all the great plastic unpainted figures that we have sitting. And in like tabletop gaming, when you have to have lots of little figures all painted up, a lot of times people will feel pressure, like, I just bought a new army and I need to paint all these up. And it turns into a chore. And not necessarily
the light,
fun.
the fun.
Yeah. Especially if you've bought it because, there's a tournament coming up I want to participate in, but I've got to get, all these 100 different figures painted up. And some people like that. Some people thrive on that and they don't mind it. But other people, sometimes they'll get into it, get halfway through and just burn out and be like, ugh, this is a bad idea.
Yeah, no, it's very important. I want to just highlight this for the audience, because I don't think it's only in the tech sphere where that's a challenge, that we sometimes mistake self-care as activities that, again, we put into our calendars or we fill our days with. Self-care is really about something that makes us feel good, helps us relax, let go of everything that's probably also bottled up inside of us, and should not turn into something that sort of is another thing I need to do.
Absolutely.
And tuning into that and detecting the difference, is this just another task I'm adding to tell myself I take care of myself, or is it really something that gives me joy and pleasure and lightness? That's an important part to note here, I feel.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a firm believer you can burn out on anything, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's true. And how did you figure out that you had burnout that time when it actually happened?
So it's kind of embarrassing because my graduate work, when I did my PhD, my research specialization was burnout. So technically I'm a burnout expert.
Okay.
But I didn't realize it. I was starting to have physical symptoms. There were things going on at work, issues with leadership, and I was having all this stress, and so I started having chest pains one time. I want to say one day, and me being stubborn, I'm like, it's not a big deal. But then after them hanging around for a day or so, I'm like, I think I'm going to go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and they ran EKG and stuff, and they're like, you're perfectly fine. It turns out it was just really severe acid reflux. So I just really bad heartburn, which is weird because I've never had any issues with that in my life. And I eat spicy food all the time. And suddenly I couldn't even eat like tomato sauce, or I would get like really bad heartburn. And I'm thinking like, oh, is all the spicy food, like, is it the revenge of the spicy food now? Am I gonna have problems? And I was talking to my partner one night, and she's like, I think you're just stressed out and anxious. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm suffering from burnout. You know, it took somebody else looking me in the face and saying, something's wrong with you, you know, and not in a terrible way, but, you know, just sort of that self-reflection of like,
a kind way.
there are things going on, you know, all these high cortisol levels in your brain are causing your body to revolt, basically. And they were right. And so in effect, the change that was made was me transitioning to a different role in my job. And after that, it was, you know, after a few weeks of sort of getting set, it was like night and day. You know, everything went away. The stress went away. The anxiety reduced greatly. The heartburn. I'm happy to say I can eat hot sauce again, eat hot foods again. So that was funny enough. That was sort of the one big thing that I kept thinking that, like, I love spicy food and I'm never going to get to eat it again. Like, this is miserable.
Yes.
Luckily, like I said, I can eat the spicy food again, which makes me, because, you know, one of my, I'll call it my self-care. One of my things that I like to do is I actually grow my own hot peppers and make my own hot sauce. That's, you know, sort of one of my, I didn't do it this year because I didn't have enough time to do all the prep work and get the seedlings and everything, but I still have, and plus I still have so many dried peppers from last year. But so that was really, I know it sounds like a silly thing, but that was really important to me. Like, I lost this ability to do something I loved, which was eating spicy food. And it was because of burnout. You know, it was because of the stress and the anxiety. And also I knew at work I was, I was disengaged, because burnout and engagement, they're the same spectrum. You know, the more burned out you are, the less engaged you are at work, and vice versa. The more engaged you are, the less you can be burnt out. So realizing that helped a lot. Making the change at work helped a lot. And then, like I said, it was sort of like night and day once I had transitioned to the new role and got into it and felt better about things. The stress melted away. I haven't had heartburn since. And I have been just better overall.
And again, you know, I'm very interested in this part where you mentioned that although you are an expert in the topic, being in the situation, it was very hard to see what was actually going on. And I think that's true for so many humans. You know, it's just human. You are in this chaos every day and you don't even realize, you know, you can't see clearly unless someone points you to it. So if someone is saying now, oh, yes, I do feel a little disengaged, maybe I should check what's going on, or I have some weird physical symptoms, I haven't really had much thought. What would you say could be the first step towards investigating? Is this maybe actually burnout or something that's more serious?
I would say one of the easiest things you can start doing is take a look at what you're doing for yourself versus what you're doing for others. And I have a free guide. I don't want to make a promotion if it's not allowed on here, but, you know, I have this little free guide thing I put together of 7 days of sort of self-care, where you go through and you answer some questions each day. And then at the end of the week, you can sort of look back and go like, oh, okay. So something simple like that, just sort of keeping track of what you're doing and how you're dealing with the stress and trying to identify what is causing the stress. You know, is because it can be from multiple things. You know, it can be from your job, it can be, you know, money's tight, relationship issues. There's all kinds of things that can be going on that really, the stress and the burnout isn't you know, discriminate against what's causing it. Everything, it's cumulative, right? Everything in your life adds to it. So sitting down and thinking about trying to find those root causes and thinking about it. And then if you start to identify like, oh, there's a lot of things going on here, I would really encourage talk to somebody. even if it's just a friend to start with, you know, find a coach, find a therapist, whatever you're comfortable with, but definitely, even if it's just one time, just go, put the stigma out of your mind about, you know, oh, like it's makes me weaker if I have to talk to somebody about my mental health or whatever. Just go talk to somebody even once and see how it works for you. Because that's it. I'll be honest, that's how I used to be. You know, when I was younger, it took me a long time to be like, I need to go talk to somebody, because I was always the mindset of, oh, it's my mind, I should be able to fix it. That's not how we work as humans, you know. So definitely thinking about that self-care that you're doing, making sure that it's there. If it's not there, start and try and just find little things you can start trying to do for yourself. And even if you're super busy and your schedule is busy, it can be, you know, just find something simple. Like, you know what, I'm going to take a 15-minute shower today or a 30-minute shower today and turn it off like nothing. You know, I'm going to put some music on or whatever, or a bath or whatever you want to do. And that's going to be my thing for today. And really sticking to that, making that time for it, is just starts to get you in the ritual of making that time for yourself, which we all know today is a premium, right? It's everything is demanding our time, families, friends, work, our personal interests. So trying to find those times that are just for you. And it's not selfish. I think there's also a stigma too. Sometimes people hear self-care and they think, oh, I'm being selfish. I need to, you know, my family needs this, or my family, which is true. But if you die of a heart attack because you've been so stressed out, you're not doing your family any good. You're not doing your friends any good. Right.
Yeah, and we don't even have to go that far. Even if you are just not present because you're so stressed out, what good does it do to your family or your friends or your colleagues, teammates, whoever it is?
Yeah, it's, you know, when somebody walks into the room with that sort of gloom cloud hanging over them, it really puts a damper on any gathering, whether it's work, social, family, or whatever. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the stigma, I mean, of course, depending with, you know, in the coaching world, it's quite common that we all accept self-care as the thing we should focus on and we should try and exercise every day. But there are still many of us who believe, and I think it's often also the way we have been socialized, we believe that it's actually a weakness, as you say. And, you know, if I go talk to someone, then what else might come up? It also makes us again feel vulnerable. And the way you mentioned in the beginning, like especially for people where it's hard to reach out to others already, because it makes us feel vulnerable, taking that step to speak to someone that seems to be not okay might even be a bigger, a really big thing to do. Yeah.
And it's just like, you think of it like exercise. You wouldn't expect to go out tomorrow and run a marathon if you haven't run to the end of your driveway ever. You know, you have to spend the time and the effort. And it's the same thing with your mental state. You know, it's not going to go from, oh, I've identified the problem and I'll be fine tomorrow because I know now. It's going to take mental exercise, basically. And that's really what self-care is, in a sense, is doing mental exercise to help lower the cortisol levels and to de-stress and have that time for you, so you're not constantly, you know, in fight or flight mode, basically.
Yeah, I like that. That idea of, I mean, often we also talk of our mind as a muscle that we can exercise, and it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Then how do you make the connection? So there's the mental part that we can exercise that muscle, but then of course there are also the emotions. And how would you say you dealt with that? Because I can imagine that especially the emotions were not easy to sort of work through and let in and accept that they are there, given just how you were thinking before.
Emotions are tough for me because the way I was raised is men don't show emotion. And, you know, men are very stoic and they don't, and not even really men, honestly, in my family, is mostly like, you don't show emotion. You just, you know, don't cry in public. Don't, if you're going to cry, go to your room and cry. Don't do that out here, sort of thing. And so that's why everybody always thinks I'm angry, because I just have this, I don't smile a lot, and it's not because I'm actually angry. It's just because of I've trained myself for so long to just not look impressed or not look whatever, because I don't, I'm not supposed to be showing that emotion. And that's something I've really had to work on in the past few years, is to not be as reserved with new people. Now, people I know, once I get to know you after a while, it's fine, and everybody gets it, and it's fine. But new people will probably think like, man, that guy is, wow, he's angry. What is wrong with him? So emotion it can be a hard thing, especially if you had an upbringing like I did, or a lot of people, there's still that stigma of emotions aren't supposed to be expressed. Let's just be, you can be happy, and that's it. Don't be anything else in public, or don't put anything else forward. And that's something that is important to work through, and allow yourself to have those emotions. And that's something where, a coach or therapist or whatever can help you sort of just let the emotions go. Sometimes you're going to get into a conversation and things are going to come up, and a coach is going to sit there and not judge you. They're going to let you have the emotions. They're going to be there and just be with you and help you get through the process. Because if you don't go through the emotions, then we don't work through them. We just suppress them again.
Yes.
So it's a tough thing. And that one, I'm going to put that on an even higher level of, going to talk to somebody to begin with is like maybe here, but working through emotions is stigma wise is like, ooh, that's
like,
a
whoa,
big,
dangerous.
like whoa, And that's why I think it's important to have somebody that understands the process and can let you work through those, and will support you through it, not judge you, and not belittle you, not, oh, it's okay, don't cry, here, let me get you no, you've got to go through the grief process, basically. In a sense, not necessarily, but I mean, that could be for anything, whether it's sadness or, anger, rage, any of those things that you need to work through. You have to go through the full process and get the emotions out, and then you can reflect on how you're feeling and what caused it. And that was hard. It's still hard for me. I'm not going to lie. I'm not better about it by a long shot. I'm still working on that sort of thing, because I still have a lot of stuff to work through myself, and probably will never be fully there. But as long as we are making that consistent effort to be a better person, I like to think every day, but some days I'm like, if it's every other day, it's probably good enough right now. So just trying to make those little efforts. And it's like the 1% rule. If you increase something by 1% every day, the compounding interest, it might seem like a very slow start, but then eventually it takes off, and you can really start to see. And especially if it's like you're doing 1% on multiple aspects of your life at the same time. You're trying to, I'm going to do 1% better at self-care. I'm going to do 1% better at negative self-talk. Just picking 2 or 3 little things will have such a huge impact, but you have to stay the course. You have to be patient. You have to understand, which is tough in this world of instant gratification. None of this is going to be instant.
Yeah.
It's taken me many, many years just to realize I need to be a better person. And that's not because I'm a bad person. It's just because I can be a better person. And so I'm choosing to be. I'm not being a different person. I want to be a better version of the person I am. And I want more people to sort of embrace that idea, because I think a lot of people hear self-improvement and they go, what's wrong with me? It's immediately defensive. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. But you can be better, right?
And that's a point I wanted to sort of jump into, because I was also thinking, if I'm now someone who struggles with the similar topics that you have struggled with, listens to this whole idea of, oh my God, this is a process, it might even take me years, and yes, emotions are also hard for me. Do I actually want to go there? So the question is, why should I actually strive to go through this whole process? What would be your answer to that?
I can say for me,
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, I knew I wanted to be a better person because just some small aspects of my life, like as you get older, you tend to have less friends and
Mm-hmm.
you tend to be less social. And the way I was talking to myself and a lot of the anxieties I have and things, I wasn't putting myself out there. So I wasn't staying connected with people. And so my social circle was shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
And which is, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a few close friends, but I really wanted to get better at staying connected to people
Mm-hmm.
and reaching out to people and not being afraid to go talk to people
Mm-hmm.
and to meet people and not be as worried about what other people think about me, to put myself out there. You know, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I would have never dreamed of coming on a podcast and being this open that, you know, anybody on the internet is going to be able to come and find. I would never have dreamed of that. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it is a big step. So for me, I had this sense that those were my personal reasons. For other people, I think most people know sort of deep down why they should be better. They may need a little bit of work to sort of bring that to the surface. And some people may just know already in the back of their head, like if I was better at this one thing, or if I, you know, was less negative, or if I took better care of myself, I think a lot of people sort of inherently know what that thing is, why they should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody's thinking about like, well, I don't know why should I, you know, just take some time and think about it. Like really think about it and be honest with yourself. You're going to get defensive as soon as you start thinking about it, because your mind doesn't want to change. It's going to try and throw up these barriers and protect you. But just be honest with yourself and start thinking like, you know, if I was just a little bit less negative with myself, what would I be able to accomplish? Or maybe what's a big goal that you have in your life that you don't even want to dare to dream it because you think it's too big.
Yes.
And if you stop and think like, oh, well, you know, I'd really, I have a former client who wanted to, they have these really big dreams, and they were like, you know, they didn't really want to talk about it at first, and then we started talking about them, and they were like, oh, I really want, you know, after talking about like, that's really, I have this goal in life to help other people, and this dream is going to do that. But it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. And so we sort of worked backwards from that, right? And we worked backwards and said, okay, well, what can we start doing now? And they're like, oh, okay. And so that sort of just allowing yourself to dream big is a good start to go, oh, that's why I want to get better, because if I get better, that's what I can achieve. So it's very personal, I think, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Very, very personal. And for everyone, it might be a different story. That is like
Exactly.
the why, the passion, or this one thing that suddenly pops open this desire to, okay, let me work on this now, because as you say, if I work on myself, that's when I can have that. Yeah. No, that's an awesome thing. And I think it's so true. Our mind will try to divert us from what it really is, because all the resistance is trying to keep us in our comfort zone and make sure like, okay, don't go there. It might be dangerous. It might bring up all the fears that you have. So stay in your comfort zone behind the computer. If it's a tech person, don't talk to anyone. But no, once you put yourself out there and you start working on yourself, that's when things actually are put into motion. Nothing can happen if we don't do anything.
Absolutely. You can read all the self-help you want. You can watch all the videos you want, but if you're not implementing anything, you're just gaining knowledge. You're not improving.
Yeah, you're increasing your data in
Yep.
your mind, but you're not really doing anything with it. Yeah. Well, that was very insightful. I think this is a beautiful sort of full stop to our conversation. because I think now the audience listening to it can really go and reflect a little on why would they want to improve themselves, and what is it particularly that they want to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Please go and think about it. Try to be 1% better every day.
That's already enough. It doesn't have to be a huge thing.
No.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Curtis, for making the time and for being so open
Oh, you're
on this
certainly
podcast
welcome.
and sharing your experiences.
Yes, thank you so much, Sabrina. It was a lot of fun.